Hello, everybody. Eric Foster, Board Chair of Cannas Capital Holdings and EquiRate AI Solutions. We just had our first board advisory board meeting last week. And one of the things that I found that really was a positive in what Simone and our team here at Cannas Capital Holdings have built in terms of the EquiRate AI solution is the fact that as a underwriting tool, in an effort to try to address the access to capital gap, not only does this tool factor in the traditional models that you have for underwriting, but it also has a social and community factor component to the underwriting criteria that looks at other tools deeper. Now, I've talked about this a little bit in past videos and podcasts, but I didn't know the extent of how deep we go until our advisory board meeting, where we show the members who came to the advisory board meeting, and slots are still open. If you're interested, definitely would love to have you as stakeholders in the myriad of different industries and sectors to be a part of our advisory board. But I wanted to just give a few of those points in regards to who we had that what we do and what we have in terms of that particular piece of community and social factors that are a secondary part of the underwriting criteria. It was amazing to me. So here's some things that we look at. So we look at in that part things like educational level and continuing education. So, of course, higher level of educational attainment is important, but continuing education for someone like me who went to college but did not finish and doesn't have a bachelor's, the ability to understand that continuing education could be looked at as a positive for me as a business owner applying for access to capital for lines of credit or for debt instruments to invest. That blows my mind because that is really a good thing. So having that, I think, is really important. Housing stability. What is your home ownership status, your length of residence, stability of housing? What's the stability of the neighborhood that you live in as a potential applicant? Crime rates, property values, community cohesion. Looking at those factors, because look, a lot of folks, and when I was a former business owner, I lived in stable neighborhoods. If that those things would have been a part of the consideration for lending with me and my partners who also lived in stable neighborhoods, that would have possibly helped us get approved for loans that would have allowed us to invest in capital equipment and have lines of credit so we could deal with the ebbs and flows of invoicing and net terms with clients, and maybe we'd still be in business today as a Black owned company, be it if it was Foster McCullum White and Associates or it was Urban Consulting Group. Now, because the second company, Foster McCullum White and Associates, was on with my second ex-wife, Jackie, I don't think it would have kept us together as a couple. We really were good at in business together, great as parents, unfortunately not good as a couple, but that would have allowed us to be able to continue the business and the good work we were doing as a business. But let me get to a few other things that we consider for social and community factors in the underwriting criteria. So, access to services, healthcare, and transportation. I mean, think about that. Do you have health insurance? Well, if you're a business owner and you don't have health insurance, that can be a major problem if something happens to you or your core management team and they're out of action for a while. The debts, medical debts, that could unfortunately knock you all out of business. Do you have stable health insurance and disability or other insurance that can support you to be able to stay in business and not have those costs just overwhelm you and unfortunately be a drag on your business? And transportation. What is the transportation that you have? Do you have stable, reliable transportation for your employment and income stability? That's critical. Then looking, of course, at income and but looking at income in deeper factors, not just traditional either business income or if you also are working a second job, work income, but also your gig economy work or seasonal work, may if you have multiple jobs that are you're doing or activities that you're doing, factoring that in is can be a game changer. And it can be a game changer because it's not traditional. There is roughly $7 trillion of economic activity, of income and spending that takes place in the gig economy. It's outside of the normal factors for consideration when thinking about and tracking economic activity, but it's still actual economic activity. So the importance of having that included, that makes sense. A little profanity here, that's good shit. You need sometimes to look deeper. And then lastly, community involvement and social responsibility, volunteer work, support and participation in local initiatives, your community relationships and cohesion, being in a fraternity. I'm in a fraternity, Mu Omicron Beta Fraternity Incorporated. You know, my partners that I worked with when I was a business owner, one of them was an Alpha. I've got a lot of family members that are in Greek fraternities and sororities, Alphas, Kappas, Omegas, Omicrons as myself. Then on the sorority side, Etas, as well as Deltas and AKAs. But that's a part of your community involvement and the activities that come from that. That's cohesion. That's being invested, being active on nonprofit boards or volunteering in charitable activities. Having those things considered and factored, your value as a part of the community, man, those are game changers. Because if you are Black or Hispanic, I give you a good example. When in the work I do with another company, Banks and Company, we were working with a Hispanic group who was going through the licensing process to open up a business in the cannabis space. And they, as a collective group, had a wealth of talent and expertise, but they also had a wealth of community relationships from their work dynamics to their involvement in Hispanic fraternity and sorority. One of the main partners, they were Greek as well. They were in a Hispanic serving fraternity and sorority. And so that was another part of community cohesion. They were active in nonprofits and with community leading organizations, all things that should have been a part of consideration for helping them get access to capital, to helping them get their business off the ground. But unfortunately, despite the ties that they had, what they brought to the table, lending systems weren't set up to help them get over the hump. And what could have been a still functioning and growing Hispanic owned cannabis business doesn't exist today. That's a shame for the community. That's a shame for the business sector. And that's a shame for impact. What we're doing here at Cannas Capital with EquiRate AI, it's really changing the game. It's kind of like when what Golden State did in basketball. When Golden State, with their, death squad for putting in Draymond Green at the center and Andre Iguodala, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and first it was, and I cannot forget I do not remember the man's name, but I think he played for North Carolina in college. And he was a part of the team when they won their first championship and then lost to Cleveland. And then they added in Kevin Durant as part of that death lineup. But just that flexibility of what they were able to do with more of a small ball approach, 3-point shooting, speed and offense. And then San Antonio, the way that the San Antonio Spurs played with Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, and that as they transitioned to Kawhi Leonard, that small ball, but the beautiful basketball, kind of like how they say beautiful football, soccer in America, but football to the rest of the world. It changed the game. It changed the way you had to structure teams to be able to be successful. It wasn't the traditional offensive sets and defensive sets. Well, that is what we're doing here at EquiRate AI, changing the game for lending that can be inclusive and can look at factors that are broader than the normal baseline factors that can give quality Hispanic owned, African American owned, Native American owned, and other minority owned businesses a real opportunity for lending and access to capital that can increase the number of sustainable businesses. That's real. You may hear people talk about, I'm great for the Black business community or I'm great for the Hispanic business community, but without actual putting together a structure and putting in the work, that's all crap. We're putting in the real work. So please follow us at www.cannascapitalholdings.com. Follow us through our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our social media accounts. We're on Blue Skies, we're on Threads, we're on Instagram, we're also on Substack and on Apple Podcasts. But check in because we here at Cannas Capital Holdings are really trying to change the game in a positive way. And as board chair, I am proud to be a part of this team. It gives me joy that I'm doing good work that can help people grow. And that's the importance of working and living, being a blessing on the others. And that's what we're doing here with EquiRate AI and Cannas Capital. So thank you. Join us. Reach out to me at eric@cannascapital.com and look forward to talking to you soon.